Actually, I had. Am I live though? Can anyone please confirm? Oh, I guess I just went live. Yeah, I just went live. Oh, so I was talking for nothing. YouTube is doing great work as always after Shishir left it and started building Coda. Anyway, hey everyone, this is Paul, the one you know, the one you like, hopefully the one you're subscribed to on Patreon. This stream is a bit different than the previous ones because this stream I'm streaming it publicly, so it's available to anyone who's subscribed to Coda Tricks. Usually I'm doing these things for patrons only. I have a lot of streams like this unlisted, shared with patrons. This one I decided to go live with because first I want to maybe bring more people to my Patreon. Now there is no tier system, it's all $10 a month, so about the same price as you pay for a pro plan of Coda. Well, you pay another $10 per month to actually become a pro, right? By watching my videos and following my advice. Okay, all kidding here, but yeah, that's one reason. One is, yeah, maybe bring more people to my Patreon campaign, and reason number two is that first I want to show, yeah, how much consideration I give to my tutorials. I try to explain things deeply, not just superficially build some template, but talk about what goes into this or that solution. You've seen me doing this in some community videos, like answering some questions, doing the algorithms and so on. And also the result of this stream, I'm gonna build a template, but the template is only gonna be available to people who are my patrons in October. So now is October. I'm gonna do things not like so there is a few templates that you get access to as so whenever you join the Patreon campaign, you're gonna have access to starter template, the GTD doc, then eventually I finish my chat and I finish the something else I had in mind, and the SVG template. And I share that with everyone who's ever been a patron. And then I'm gonna do something like monthly templates. So if you're a patron in a particular month and I make a template in that month, this template is gonna be available to you as a subscriber in that month. So when you stop being a subscriber, you stop getting access to templates of those months when you stop being a subscriber. And then when you get back on board, or if you're a new subscriber, you don't anymore have access to these templates, and maybe at some point I share them. Maybe Coda finally introduces paid templates in their gallery, and well, it's not gonna be a template of the month anymore. I'm gonna sell it for maybe $25 instead of the regular 10. Right, so this is the idea going forward. Hopefully you can hear me well, and yeah, so the idea for today's doc, the today's solution, comes from a client request. So one client recently contacted me, and I think he is actually my patron, contacted me about getting emails into his Coda system. And in fact, I did this a while ago with that online classes thing. It's actually how we started working. They asked me to bring all the homework emails that get submitted to their inbox. So we decided that we should set up a unified window, yeah, unified inbox where every student sends emails to. So this would be a single inbox that we didn't watch on it with Coda, even though it's a Gmail or G Suite email. We did it with Integromat because apparently we wanted to store attachments. The question I got today, how do we store attachments to Coda? The answer is we don't. We cannot do this at the moment. Maybe sometime in the future we can. At the moment we cannot, so we did it with Zapier at the time, and it was watching the emails coming to that inbox. It was storing the attachments to Google Drive. Oh, hey Tom. we then we saved the data about that incoming email into a coda table and the link to the attachment as well. And then we had a very interesting setup based on that incoming table of emails. We had the logic to analyze which student this could be coming from, and it was pretty quirky because there were like families where homeworks for multiple kids were sent from their parents' accounts, so it could be either like Tom or Alex or someone else, and the emails we couldn't strictly match by emails. So this is this student because yeah, sometimes their moderator for their classes, the teacher was actually sending the emails or forwarding the emails, or they were mistakenly sending these emails to a teacher, and the teacher would then forward these to that unified inbox. So we had to, in addition to the automatic resolution, and then we tried to resolve that to the actual classes. And then if the email subject had something hinting at the something hinting at what kind of class that was. Maybe it was lesson number 22 and it was stored in the subject. We tried to match this automatically, and if an email was resolved automatically, it was then stored to the database of resolved emails. And the ones that we couldn't figure out whether it was strictly linked to one student and a particular class. We had an interface for manual review. There were people, the program facilitators, who were watching through these emails, and then all they had to do is click one of the buttons, discard, maybe it was a mistakenly like a reply to a homework or a reply to a reply that doesn't have to be logged as a homework, so they could reject it. They could select the student and the class and then accept it, and right there from this interface they could add this email. So they selected the student and it's an unknown email. They could click a button to add this email to yet another table of extra emails per student. So the emails we know that we should match with this student. So we had this very interesting setup back at the time. And the client who asked me to build this for them, apparently they don't need this much. They don't need this much of integration and sophistication of the setup, but they still need to. They run their task management in Coda. Apparently, I seen the doc, but it's in Norwegian, so I didn't really make much sense of it. But the part that he hired me to do, and you know, when you hire me to do something, I charge hourly, but when I take something, some piece of the task, and I make content out of it for YouTube, Patreon, whatever, I usually waive all the costs that would go into it. So this piece that I'm gonna build now is gonna come at no cost for this client. I'm gonna charge an extra for integrating it with his particular doc. So I'm gonna build something universal here and then integrate it with his doc in the end. So that's the only thing I'm gonna charge him for. So yeah, come to me with interesting assignments, and you may be in luck because I need content for Patreon. And actually it's a good thing that I started doing client work again, because it gives me ideas for what I should build. So yeah, I need something similar for this client, and let's go to the drawing board. I'm gonna try and explain the logic that I'm gonna put into this thing. So yeah, I reduce myself into the screen again, open the whiteboard, get a sip of coffee. I thought of recording this at first, then decided to do it on a live stream. So yeah. Okay, the problem is that you cannot see my cursor, but you can see me driving, right? Drawing. So yeah, we have some system already. We have a table of tasks. We have a table of maybe clients, projects, doesn't matter how they live together, and so on. And then we have some inbox. So we might have a G Suite or called Google Workspace right now, or we could have, and G Suite, we have a pack, right? So we have a pack. And we may have something like Outlook, yeah, or Microsoft 365, which does not at the moment have a pack, yeah? Or any other IMAP or POP or whatever source that we're gonna probably integrate with Zapier, Integromat, or 100 of other tools that try to capitalize on the success of Zapier and Integromat, right? The cookie cutter, if this then that workflow tools. So this somehow needs to get, so there needs to be a table in the end of emails that is then linked, let's say, to something in our doc that's linked to a task or to a client or to a project. So we want to track emails by task. And yet another departure from our lecture is that Coda is not really that well built for handling volumes of emails. Well, volumes of anything, to be frank, but volumes of emails especially. I'm comparing, and that's because I've seen HubSpot, I've seen some other tools. Of course, it's not a blank slate. It does not let you build whatever workflow you have. But if your only goal is to track emails per clients and maybe change the client status and maybe do some, I don't know, sales pipeline, you probably don't want to build this from scratch in Coda, right? Even with this template I'm going to give you, you probably don't want to do that because you're probably just better off getting an off-shelf solution for this, a tool like HubSpot. Well, you won't have to then invest into building this from scratch. You won't have to invest into trying to then optimize for scale, clean up old messages, set up access control. So with Coda, something that I have to tell every time, you cannot share a part of the doc with a particular person just yet. You share the entirety of the doc or none of it with each particular person or an email or a user or a folder or whatever. You share either the entirety of the doc or none of it. Filtering, locking are not security features. They still have access to the whole file of the whole doc. So if you want to have access control, salespeople, marketing departments, etc., you probably are better off using something else. This is applicable only if you already have your system set up in Coda, and all you want is to probably give more context to each task by bringing in emails either from G Suite or whatever into Coda, so that on your task detail layout, right? So you have the detail layout here, you have the task name, right? Some fields, and here you have just a list of emails, and you can read the exchanges of what happened, yeah, for that task. Maybe the client asked for an update, or were asking about deadlines or whatever. So if you want to have this in your Coda setup, that's ultimately when this makes sense. I need another few sips of coffee. I don't know who's watching at the moment. That's how these streams are usually. I'm not editing myself out. It's not a recorded video, so I drink coffee, I talk about life. Talk about my competition, who sometimes do weird solutions that I don't agree with. The coffee was perfect. The drip coffee, just of the perfect temperature to drink it right now. Okay, back to our thing. So we need to have this table of emails, and we assume that, well, we not assume, we presume, we know that as emails will be pouring into this table, we want this table to be able to scale. So yeah, we want this table to scale, which means ideally there are as few column formulas as possible. So does not recalculate when new rows are added to it. And this means that all the logic that sets all columns in this table, so we have a table, yeah, with subject, sender, body, whatever else, everything has to be inputs. So input columns, not formulas. Because formulas, if we have a column that's a formula and we add a row here, it gets recalculated, and sometimes it gets recalculated for the whole column, sometimes it does not, but the fewer formulas we have running here, the simpler the dependency graph of things in your Codadoc is. So whenever you add an email here and we want to link that to a task, so we have a task, right, the tasks table, and it should have an emails column. That's a lookup from the table of emails. Should this be a formula, like a lookup formula, a filter, or all emails where task is this row, right? The one from here. Hell no, it does not. It should not be a formula, because every time you add a row here, the filter will try to reevaluate for all the tasks that you have in the system. So every time you add an email to this table, it's gonna trigger the recalculation of the whole column here. So we need some external piece of logic that we need to postulate that once an email gets into this table of tasks, so once we add a row here, nothing recalculates in the rest of the doc, or the minimum amount of data recalculates in this doc. So only the task, actually, no, nothing. Only the task that is affected is recalculated in this doc. And ideally, there is no avalanche like updates that affect anything else. So we need to keep this part very simple and very performant. Otherwise, when we start getting thousands of emails into this table, we will run into performance issues. Then, how do we get things into this table? So So nothing recalculates. So nothing recalculates on this table at all. This means that all links to a task, to a client, etc., it has to be pre-calculated at the moment of insertion of the row into this table. So we cannot run a formula that finds a client by matching it to the sender's email. We cannot have this formula here, because this means we add a sender and we have 1,000 rows here in the emails table. We add a new sender, it tries to run this formula again for all the 1,000 rows and see if, okay, maybe it's a new sender now, maybe we should match it to another client now. So so if this formula is dependent, so if, I'm trying to explain it. So if we have a formula, something like tasks filter, whatever, task name, current value, task name equals to this row, subject, let's say all tasks are named the same as email subjects, whatever. This will be recalculated whenever task name changes or a task of the, well, not the task name changes, but whenever anything changes, whenever a row is added to a task, whenever a row is removed from the task, so it reruns the filter to check whether maybe the result changes, whether the task name changes on any row from the tasks table, whenever the subject changes, this will get recalculated. And this is not an easy formula to run because the filter, what filter does? If we have 10,000 tasks, right, it goes over each task and checks its task name, reads the task name, checks it against the subject for each of the 1,000 tasks. If there's 10,000 tasks, it runs 10 times the operations to run this thing. If you multiply this operations times the emails in your table, you get millions of calculations then are not necessary really, because once we match an email to a task, we don't need to try and recalculate that affinity. We need to calculate it once, and that's what stamping is for. That's why we need these, none of these to be formulas. Each of these to be a pre-calculated value. So whenever a row is added, the value is already there. And also it's gonna benefit if we maybe not store lookups here, because if we store lookups, it not very much, but it still bloats the table. So any time we store we don't really need this affinity because we're not gonna run a filter here. And you'll see what I mean once I'm actually implementing this. We don't need this to be a lookup really. Just to save these few megabytes of data on a huge table and to prevent those unnecessary recalculations when we maybe change the display column or whatnot, we can just keep the task ID and maybe use the row ID from the task, because we're gonna stamp the emails, we're gonna update the emails list for each task manually anyway. So we are moving away from the column formula to the code that will update this, as the email gets processed and inserted into this table. We don't really need to keep this affinity by task ID or whatever. We just should store it in case we need to archive emails, then unarchive them back. Actually, it's even a good idea to store task IDs, because we can always delete old emails that, if we so wish, we can bring back the subset of emails, map, recalculate, match them back. So it's gonna be a better solution overall. So okay, we've decided on this part. So this table has to be a very, as I call them, thin table. A thin table is a table that only has input columns, does not have formulas. It's not trying to calculate anything depending on just a sec. Fun fact, my client who asked me to do this is writing to me about some problems with well, something that I'm gonna talk about right now. So I'm probably gonna invite him to the stream. Just give me one short moment to reply to him and invite him to the stream. And where is the link to the stream? Yeah, it's gonna benefit actually, because he is my patron, and I'm not gonna show this on his private doc, right? need this in a moment. But instead of replying to his email, I'm just gonna talk through it. So he's afraid that there is a sync table. So yeah, it's just the part that I'm gonna talk about right now. So yeah, we have this thin table, and this is basically the emails log, right? So this is the emails log that we are collecting in the end of our so all emails that are relevant to our Coda setup will end up in the emails table. Well, DB emails, right? Now it's the question of how do we get them here? You could say, and as I said, we want to have some sort of an interface, right? So first we need some place to review interface, review queue. The one that can have formulas, right? The one that will try to match each subject and each sender to a client or a task or whatnot. So runs all the formulas. And we need to, oh well, that's it. So this is where we have the review, this is where we have the matching. And this is the consolidated source. So it's the middle, that's that middle piece that takes data from here, from here, from here. We could build, and that's something, well, we could have a G Suite, right? So we could import a pack, right? A packs table, a G Suite emails table, and run all the formulas to match a subject to a particular client right on it. And then have a button that would take this row and insert it into the emails table. But why I'm not a big fan of this approach? Because today you are using Gmail, tomorrow you decide to migrate to something else. When you build all your logic on a sync table, I'm not a fan of building any logic onto the sync table. For that reason is that when you want to swap that sync table with something else, you basically have to rebuild everything you've added onto the sync table from scratch. So you have to then make a regular table if you decide to move from G Suite to Outlook, where you have to make a separate table where you'd pour emails from Integromat or whatever, and you have to rebuild all the views, all the nice interfaces, all the buttons on it. It's not modular. You cannot swap the data source that easily. So I'm a big fan of a modular approach where you keep the sync table as a separate thing, so in emails, if it's a sync table. But then you have a separate table, review queue, and it's a plain table. It has it's a local table. But then whenever there is a new email in the G Suite table, there is an automation running that adds it to the review queue. Yeah, you lose 1 to 5 minutes worth of time because there is a delay in how automation runs. But you have this link is not hard. So you can then, you decide you don't want to use Gmail anymore. You swap this out from another data source. Maybe there's a pack for Outlook or whatever, and you then just pour emails into this review queue from there. And if you decide to run Integromat, Zapier, etc., you can insert subject and body and all that right into the review queue. That's what we've been doing with that old client. So we take the Integromat solution is watching over some inbox and inserts right into the review queue. So the review queue is gonna be that the table that only has the rows for, and the rows, we can actually delete these rows because we don't need this to grow indefinitely. It only has the rows for the emails that have not been processed yet. So the ones that we haven't, that Coda hasn't processed automatically and inserted into the emails table. Or the ones that we maybe brought back from the emails table for repeated review if maybe it was mistakenly assigned to some task. So we can bring it back to the review queue. And this is the place where we consolidate, we can swap the data sources easily, and we get the data into that review queue table. We don't have to rebuild it. So what I'm trying to, and this is the table is going to have only as many rows as there are unprocessed emails at the moment. So 5 emails unprocessed, only 5 rows. This means formulas are fast on it. It does not have to, we don't have to worry on recalculating on a huge table of all historical emails. We can make interfaces on it, the review interfaces. And basically this part here, this piece, sorry for my neurotic drawing that I have here. Maybe it does not make much sense because it makes sense to me in my head. It might not make much sense here on the drawing, right? This is ultimately what I'm trying to what I'm going to build here on the stream. So we are half an hour into the stream. I don't want to take a break now. I think I'm gonna build this in an hour or in an hour and a half. That's how much time roughly I have from this moment. And after that is done, I make a template out of it, and I try to and I make a demo, right? So what are the tasks we need to do? So we make a review queue table. We make email log table. We make actually, why am I doing this here? Let's the general idea here is to have everything modularized so that we can take one part, we can take the table and swap it with another table without affecting the rest of the system. Okay, let's just start blank, and I'm probably gonna make this a bigger. This is gonna be our, I'm not making this into a template yet. I'm then gonna turn this into a template. Hopefully we can do multi-page templates now, can't we? So I make a doc, let's say it's a database. As usual, I do white pages. I'm still looking forward to the day when they make it a default setting. What am I doing? So this is gonna be the summary, or actually, the descriptor or whatever. The basic things we need is sender, recipients, subject, body. We can have something like CC and BCC and whatever, but we have the subject, we have the email body, And we also need some sample data, right? So let's say sender is we have the send at, which is probably, yeah, just some date and time, this timestamp of when it's sent. So all the pieces of context we need for the review to be able to match this to something. So we have this as an incoming information, and we can, maybe the summary is gonna be actually just the timestamp of the email. So we can set this as a display column, delete this, and that's gonna be enough for trying to, yeah, match things. No, because we're gonna build some interface over it. So yeah, let's keep it like this for now. The next step is we make our stored emails. This point is going to be something like this. But we're gonna have something like linked item ID. Yeah, so we're gonna store this email to an item in our doc, such as a task or a client or whatever, just so that we keep that calculation result. And what makes sense, since we are, yeah, we're gonna mess this up, I guess. It's so we will not start emails. The row ID counts from 1, but let's not worry about that just yet. So we'll have our sample data. And here are the things we're gonna try and match our emails about, our emails to. Let's also have clients just for the so we try to, yeah, match things to people, and then we have some tasks, and let's have a multi-lookup from. So this task is for Paul, this task is for Paul and Artem, and whatever else we have about this task. So what are the tasks? Not the tasks, but let's project. It's gonna be easier, and then we will, it's the demo, right? I'm just doing this for the demo. We have a website, we have a YouTube, and actually, yeah, we have the Patreon, YouTube, and website. Here we have our review queue, and let's say the sender is this and the recipient is like all the time the recipient is me, and maybe sender is not necessarily also, let's say Paul, Artem, and Andriana. And this, the assignee is Andriana, Artem and Andriana, for instance. And we have this coming from oh, wow. Yeah, setting up a sample data is sometimes tedious. So we have something coming from a sender. We can already, let's just make ourselves some sort of a separator to visually separate what we have incoming from what we are trying to resolve. Let's first match to the recipient. So matched matched sender is, let's say, db people, filter where email, so we find a person who can match to this email. Actually, let's find all the senders that can match to this. Anyway, this is going to be our logic for this is going to be our logic for finding anyone who matches to a particular email. So let's say we are not matching by email, maybe we are matching by name, or maybe a person has multiple emails, and well, there's lots of possibilities here. Like with the online classes, with the online classes client, what we had is that we had one parent sending homeworks for multiple students, right? So multiple people could match against a multiple people could match against a recipient. So let's have something like a sender override. So select the sender. And it's a single one. And we can have something like a status. So what just happened here? So is sender strictly matched? And I guess that's when matched senders count is strictly equal to 1. So let's say it's sent from not Artem at Codatrix, but sent from Artem Frollo at gmail.com, right? So there is no match, and we don't know who the person who sent the email is. So we are prompted to select the sender. We can already add some conditional formatting to it, like if sender strictly match is unchecked, we highlight these two things. Actually, no. So let's not just go there yet. And we have the resulting sender, so the final result of the match, which is either select the sender, but if the override is blank, we take it matched senders, the first of the bunch. And we can also add another step, is sender present, and I like naming all my Boolean checkboxes, the true-false checkboxes, starting them with is. Even though it may not make sense grammatically, I prefix them with is, not are, but always is, so that it's easier then to reference these in a formula. So is sender present. If it's not, then we highlight the and this is if resulting sender is not blank. So it highlights that we need to select the sender. And once we select that this is Artem sending this email, we have our sender present, right? So this is the manual review step. And one thing that we can do, and we will do this in the end of our project, let me very quickly run the to-do. So make a review and somewhere in the end I'm gonna add this add so make a sample data. We've done that yet. That's gonna be our to-do for this stream. Yeah, the next step is to try, and once we know who the sender is, we are trying to match the email. Maybe it's too complicated for the demo. Maybe we should have just done it to a task or to whatever, but I think it may be beneficial to show a multi-step to have it like to show how you would do if you need to match against multiple criteria. So first we narrow down by the sender which project it is about. then we can suggest it, so, or not matched, but automatically so select the person, the sender, and then resolved. Yes, sender resolved. True. Then we have automatically suggested projects. So now we're gonna match this against the project. So let's say we have our summary subject regarding YouTube. Then we have so Artem runs YouTube and both run Patreon, right? Both run the website. And then how do we try and look for projects? Maybe we look through the subject, or we look through the body for matching against any of the projects. And this is a lookup from projects. Again, it can be multiple projects matching at once. Let's see if there's some, if this subject to lowercase contains the text, the project name, or whether the text's body has a project's name. Yeah, we found some projects that automatically suggested projects. Oops. Again, is project strictly matched? And let's say that you need to increase subscriber count. Maybe bring your, or put a link on your website. Right, so now it lists both patrons and website, and again we can improve this by including some keywords to the projects, not match against the project name, but let's say keywords. Yes. Patreon, patron, YouTube, or viewer, subscriber, website, blog, and we have this, we can do something like list combine the project name and keyword split by a comma, and again take each word or actually just do this to lowercase split and then select the unique combinations of keywords. It's a list, it's a text value that has commas in it. So let's say it's like extra. And we combine a keywords list to now try and match the email against. So instead of this row subject, we don't just find this, but we try and find anything from each project, keywords lists, we try to find whether the subject contains the current keyword from the list. And this list is not blank, so there's at least some matches in the... So for each of the keywords, so for each of the projects, we have 5 projects, for each of them we run this filter condition. And for each of the keywords, we try to match the intersection, whether the subject to the lowercase. Actually, it makes sense so that we don't run this lowercase, lowercase, lowercase in each of the loop within a loop. We can simply make a lowercase subject and the lowercase body as a separate column here. But again, does not really make much difference because this table is not going to grow. So it's a performance impact, but not something we need to worry about just at the moment. And we find whether that keyword is somewhere within the subject or the body of the currently evaluated project. So yeah, apparently it found everything everywhere, which should not be the case. So we have the keywords from the... We look on each project, the keywords list. Run a formula map. That's not correct, because on keywords list we try to filter the keywords that exist in there and then see if that is not blank. Yeah, that's correct, because the formula map is just gonna be like true, false, true, or false, 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 but the list is still like not empty because it has 3 falses. It's not empty. So yeah, this matches against patrons and subscribers and a website and YouTube. So this matches all the three conditions. We can further try and match against the sender. So we know that Artem is responsible for YouTube and websites. So Patreon is not, this email is not really about the Patreon. I hope you're following. Is anyone watching? Please tell me if you're still following what I'm doing here. I'm building a demo at the moment, so this is not some common things. This is just how I would build the demo. So these are the demo pieces. So yeah, we are filtering for projects where keywords match and assignees contains this row result sender. So we first limit to projects where the person is present. Yeah, hey Virginie, thanks for letting me know. And only if this is a project where Artem is involved, only from those projects that are first filtered for Artem, we try and do the keyword match. So first we filter by assignment. So if we decided that it was Andriana, it could be Patreon or website. If we decided it was Artem who sent this email, it could be YouTube or website, right? Depending on the keywords in the email. Again, is project strictly matched? If automatically suggested project count strictly equals to 1, then yeah, the project is strictly matched and we are happy with it. And again, in project, could be task, could be anything. Select the project manually. And another thing we could do, if we have the multi-matches here, we could set this up so that we don't select from all the 3 projects, but we only select from the selection that is selected here. So the list, let's say we have 1,000 projects, but we know that we have keywords only from 2 or 3 projects. So we select either of the 2 or 3 projects that we have for selection. So what we can do, we can set up a lookup filter here. But I'd still like to give an opportunity to override that. So we can have something like show all standard choices shown. And is all project choices shown. And now now we can set up the filters to a formula. Either this row is all sender choices shown, or this row automatically suggested senders is blank, because of course if it's blank we need to show the whole list of senders. This means no one matched, and there's no point of showing a blank list to select from. Or current value is in this row automatically suggested senders, and we don't need these parentheses here. So here we select from Paul, Artem, and Andriana. Here we actually don't have any other person to select from. So select the sender manually. It's Artem only. Actually, we can also show the whole list if sender is strictly matched. This means if we open this dropdown, something's wrong, and we of course need to see someone else. But yeah, if is all sender choices shown, this is gonna show the full list here. And if 2 senders matched against an email, it would only show 2 people to select from. But let's also do it that is all sender choices shown, or is sender strictly matched. So again, if sender is strictly matched, to show everyone else. So maybe we want to say it's an email from Andriana actually. If it's blank, the result sender is gonna default to the automatically suggested one, right? So select the sender manually is just like an override. And let's do the same here. Is all projects shown? Let's have a similar formula here. Filter, custom filter. Is all project choices shown, or is project strictly matched? We could limit actually, or we could limit these to projects in only for the resolved sender. So we could do it like that. So if we know it's for Artem, but so if all project choices shown is displayed, we show the full list of projects, but otherwise we filter down to projects only for the sender, and further we only filter down to the projects in this project strictly matched or automatically suggested projects is blank, and current value is current value not working here? This is a lookup from projects, right? So this should work. So current value am I doing something wrong here? So this is the item settings from DB projects, and the filter is a custom filter, and something is not working as it should. This row is all project choices shown, or this row is project strictly matched, or automatically suggested projects is blank, or we could just have a count less or equals to 1. It does not resolve current value. Probably it should resolve current value to a project. So current value assign. That's a code bug that we have to work around with dereference, or unless it's, well, it something's wrong with the current value here, or this row automatically suggested projects. So yeah, we can select either YouTube or website because this is the choice that we are given from automatically suggested projects. If nothing is suggested, we can select either for Artem. If one is present, or none is present, we are given everything for Andriana. And if all choices are shown, we are given all the 3 projects to select from. So the logic actually works pretty well. I'm just wondering why this is probably a bug, because current value here should resolve to DB projects, and it doesn't. So we have to do the deref hidden formula to by force try and read the assignees columns, take current value, typecast it to DB projects. So we need to force Coda to think of current value as a row from DB projects and try and read assignees column from it. So that's what deref formula, hidden formula, does. It says try to forcefully read a column on a table from a value. So assume that value is from the table and try and read that column. So here you specify the table and the column. Here is the value, and it tries and reads it properly in our case, because it dereferences the assignees from current value, and then it checks for the result sender. So it shows us two items here for Artem. If Patreon is also selectable by Artem, it would show Patreon here as well. So if we remove Artem from this and this, it will show only the website here, right? Right. So it works fine, but the formula editor gives us a little bug that we probably need to log to Coda at some point, that here the current value context is incorrectly determined. And by the way, if anyone's watching from the outsiders, this is your difference between a Coda expert and the Coda expert, or well, with anyone who's just treading, tipping toes into Coda and already wants to do this for customers, and then a person who knows Coda inside out. Don't want to brag, but I know how this works under the hood, and I can see that, okay, this is a bug and this will work. I can make it work with hidden formulas, with workarounds, with whatever ways I can make Coda work and not waste your precious time asking for support. Then the support would probably ask me about this kind of thing, because very few people know about the deref formula. It's an old one. Very few people would know how to solve this. They would have a hard time trying to understand what you were trying to do in the first place. I can solve it in 2 minutes to fix this, and then I will send the bug to Coda and they will follow up on it. But I will continue developing your tool, not waiting for anyone there to reply on it. So that's why you should invest, if you wish to hire a consultant or a doc builder for hire. That's where it's worth investing extra hourly rate into things that can get solved much faster, right? Where a person knows what they are doing. So yeah, and this is our setup now. And once we have our resolved project, which is again, select the project manually. If blank, no, if select the project manually is blank and is project strictly we did it wrong, because if we don't select Artem and we have multiple senders, it's gonna resolve to the first one, which is not what we want. So this needs to be in a different way. Which if select the sender manually, then it's the select the sender manually. Is sender strictly matched? Then we take the automatically suggested senders first or last, doesn't matter, it's the only one. Otherwise, it's a blank value. Same here. Switch if. Select the project manually, so the manual override always takes precedence. Otherwise, is project strictly matched? Then we take automatically selected, automatically suggested projects first or last or whatever. Otherwise, we don't select any. So if we have the result sender Artem, both YouTube and website matches. If we don't select manually that it's YouTube, we don't have a resolved project. So we don't just assume it's either of these. But if we have one matching, Patreon in our case, yeah, we have the resolved project. So we know for sure that is project resolved. Resolved project is not blank. And again, we can have some conditional formatting duplicated for this. is project resolved, but have the different set of select the project manually, these and these, highlighted in yellow. So for these emails, we had to, what did I, forgot to do this. And here we, so we don't have an email result, we select Artem, we have the result sender. Then we have, as the next step, resolve the project, select YouTube, great. Select website, I guess that's it. Yeah, website something, YouTube, Patreon, YouTube, website, Patreon. Is project resolved? It's resolved. It also makes sense to have one last checkbox, is email resolved. It can be like we right now have a chain, right? A project cannot be resolved if a sender is not resolved. Although I think it can, right? So we delete the Artem, but we still select the project, YouTube, so the project is resolved. Yeah, it's blank because we haven't selected the sender, so it should be like we first select the sender, then we select the project, but if we show all, we can still override that. Anyway, is email resolved, which means it will tell our automation or our button whether we can take it and get it into the queue, into the database of resolved emails. So is sender resolved and is project resolved. So it's only true if all the missing pieces, if everything is resolved. Either automatically, so we have an email incoming and it reads, it comes from Adriana, and it's sent to me, and the subject is Patreon update, and everything is resolved automatically, right? We know it's from Adriana, we know it's regarding Patreon, and we didn't have to manually select anything. So the email is resolved automatically as it was inserted into this table. But then an email comes again from Artem's other email, and then subject is, hey, let's go grab a pint, and maybe something. It neither knew it's an email from Artem nor it's for some project. So we can maybe then match it to Artem, but it's not regarding any project, and we can actually, it will appear in our review queue and we can discard, which means delete this row from the review queue for good. It's not relevant to any of our tasks. It just got here by mistake. Maybe we were listening on too many emails. It's always better to listen on more emails than lose an important email, right? So that's something I'm probably gonna set up for myself when I build my client CRM. I will listen on anything coming into Codatrix account, but then I will just remove from the review queue the ones that didn't match to anything. So it's better to do it like that. Finally, 2 buttons. Save and discard. And with the previous client, we also had extra logic that allowed automation to discard emails that we knew that these were trash without having people to go and look through them. So for instance, those were replies to homework emails. So they had these were not the first email in the chain or something. So the email was not sent to homework@company.com, but it was sent to someone else and then forwarded to homework, or it was a reply to a homework. It still ended up to be in this table, but we knew that we didn't care about logging it into our Coda setup. We knew that it was a reply to a post-class email, so it looked like a post-class email, but it was a reply or something. So it had that flag that it was probably a reply, it had the reply marks, and automation would automatically discard it. So we had yet another button where we had the logic to know what is the automatic action for this, either save or discard. In our setup, we will set this up in a way that automation can only save it, but not discard it. And yet another flag that we want to have is not for automatic processing, and I'll explain this in a moment why we have that. The reason for that is that we will want to be able to get an email from here. Maybe it's mistakenly misattributed or something, back into the review queue. So we want to bring it back for attribution. It was automatically linked to Patreon, but we know it's an email not for Patreon, but for something else. So we want to have this process in place to re-attribute the email to some other task. We can do it with a dedicated panel, but we can also utilize the review queue. So we can bring an email back. It will again create a row here. It will create a row here, but it will set the do not automate flag so that automation does not try to pick on it and get it back into the DB emails, right? Back where it was. So it gives us time to act on it manually when we have this flag. So automation will not pick it up. Save and discard will probably do, all that discard will do is probably just delete this row, unless we are in any way this row, delete rows. If we are in any way interested in this email, again, this is a template, you will be able to set up your own logic, like maybe log that there was a discarded email, maybe still save it to DB emails, but put a discarded flag on it, just so that it is in your Codadoc. Maybe it's important, maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. So we will have a save action and a discard action. And another thing that we probably want to do is that we, the save action should probably, there should be some extra steps, right? So we want to have this piece of logic that takes the saved email and it appends it to the emails for a particular task. So, so that we don't run a formula on it, we have our DB projects, we have an emails column, right? Or related emails. But instead of running a formula on it, so DB emails is the emails from the created DB emails. So yeah, in the database, we can only click save if is email resolved. So we disable this button if not, if email is not resolved, or created entry in DB emails is not blank. So we have, we can say, let's have an action. An action save that's only gonna be active is if everything is resolved and there is not yet an email in the emails, and we have this, so whenever it saves, what it does, we run multiple actions. First, of course, DB emails, add row. Then we do something with the tasks. We need to update the emails for that task. And as the last step, we do this row, delete rows, of course, because we do not care about this review queue row anymore. We save it to the emails, to the DB emails. Linked item ID. So let's have our project ID column. I'll just be this row ID. So what we do, what we care about. Linked item ID is resolved project ID. What else do we have there? Subject, this row. Subject, body, this row. Body, maybe we just limit to the left 1000 characters, to the first 1000 characters from the body. So it's up to you what you want to save to the emails log. So again, maybe just save a portion of the email to the log. You don't care about all of it. A link to the email itself, if it comes from, I don't know, Gmail, you can have a link to the email thread or the email. So whatever you feel is important to store on that log, here you write it here in the save action. So you create, yeah. So body, sender, send at, this row, send at, recipient, this row, recipient. So whatever, I think that's about it, right? So did we miss anything? Not really. So sender, recipient, subject, body, send at. If you also so much wish, you can store on the DB emails, you can store the sender not as an email, but as a resolved row from the people column instead of an email. That again depends on you. Just remember that references is usually, it takes more space. So if you plan to grow this email stable indefinitely, that's probably gonna grow a bit faster than if you just use text data in here. But if you wish so much, you can have the sender as the person and do the same with recipients actually. And in your save, the sender is going to be not the email of the sender, but resolved sender. Yeah, this row resolved. Doesn't matter, resolved sender. It's already that, this row. And delete rows. And actually we need to update, we need to perhaps, and perhaps not. There's two ways what we can do now. We can save, we can take the created row, memorize it here, and then on the DB projects append it to the list here. So we can do the list combine thing here to collect the emails. Or we could just run a filter through all the emails. So we could do it both ways. The easier way is to just run a filter through all emails in the database and insert that into related emails cell. So just update it, overwrite it entirely. Run a filter, get an array, so a list of rows, insert it into a related emails cell. Another way is to append it to the, so take whatever is here. If it's blank, then it's blank. If it's not, then take whatever is here and append the created email. That is an easier, actually it's a more performant way to just append an item to a list instead of again collect all the emails. But also a little bit more complicated to set up, but let's go with a more complicated to set up. So we add a row and we have to store the result of the added row. This row, modify rows, created entry in DB emails. Actually, I'm often not nesting these. So this row modify rows. So this basically means add a row. Add a row, and the result that added row in save the reference to that added row into a cell here. Now that we've done this, we need to take the resolved project and update. So we can actually make we make a separate button for it. So update. Update the project to link to the created email. So once we have the created email, it takes the resolved project, modify rows, related emails, by taking the list combine of what is now in related emails, this row created entry, it can be list combine, it can be splice, doesn't matter. With list combine it's a bit easier because if related emails is blank, we cannot run splice on it, so we need to do something like related emails. Actually, we can do something like this. So related, but we need to dereference it too many times. So related emails, that's row created entry in DB emails, and we filter for current value is not blank, and actually you can just filter is from table DB emails. We do this. What does it not like? Just ignore that. So what this thing does, it takes whatever is in the related emails. If it's blank, it takes the blank. If it's one item, it takes one item. If three items, appends the currently created, the currently processed entry, filters out the blanks and the ones that are not from the table DB emails, which means the deleted rows. If you are deleting old rows, it's gonna filter those out, and insert it back into the related emails field. Which makes me think it's not the right way to do this sort of sanitization, because if we bring back, if we delete a row, we bring it back, we also want to run this on the DB projects. So this has to be stored on some single place where this is run on the DB projects, the sanitization of related emails. Anyway, let's do it for now, and run this as we do the saving. So we do this, we click the update the project to link to the email, and then we delete the row. Let's see how this works in action. Website, the email is stored to DB emails, and it's linked to DB projects. So in our DB projects, pop up, we can have information about our related emails, right? And if you don't want this to be like, you don't want this related emails to be editable, I mean, you can add rows from it. So let's add more from the review queue. Let's save this one and save this one. So we have 3 emails. One is linked to project number 3, 2 are linked to project number 1. Now on DB projects we have, wait, why is it linked to the first one as well? Oh, we only need to update the resolve project related emails. Read that and combine. So we update the column, but we read the value from the given row, not from the whole. Because if we use this here, we read everything from each row, right? Because we read the whole column. So all the list of lists we are reading from there. So we need to take only the resolve project and its related emails, and then combine it with the created one. So yeah, if you want to not be able to do this, you just have to create another column which mirrors the related emails, but it's a formula. This way you will not be able to directly change the set of selected related emails. Stamped related emails as a calculated formula. DEB emails multi-select. So when you have that, you can hide the stamped one and show the formulaic one and set up the columns. And you won't have that add row, select row selection here anymore in this. You can sort them by sender or by sent at. Sending or descending, we just don't have a timestamp here. Yes, sent at. Either older to newer or newer to older. So this is how we have now emails linked to a project. We have this working. Let's say here's another email about something. It's sent by Artem. It's about YouTube. Yeah. We save it. And it's stored for the second project, which is YouTube. And now we have this email linked to the YouTube project. So this is the basic way of setting this up. And this is stamped. So whenever we add emails to the emails database, regardless if we have thousands of rows here, it does not affect the recalculation of emails. So if we had it the other way, let's say we had DB emails filter where linked item ID equals this row, project ID. This is what we would have. We would have DB projects recalculated along. So if we have 1,000 rows, this starts becoming a problem, because whenever we change the, this is dynamic. We can change the project affinity of an email. So we know that, okay, maybe this should be linked to project number 2 and not project number 9. But if we know for sure that this is not gonna be, or project number 3 I meant, this is not gonna change. So once an email goes into the DB emails database and the project affinity is not gonna change on that email, there's no reason to run this as a column formula anymore. It will only slow down the doc as we start getting those tens of thousands of rows people are talking about in the community. This will slow your doc down, because it will try to run this whole column calculation every time a new email drops into the DB emails. So instead of that, we are going with the so there's the declarative and there's the imperative approaches to programming. The declarative approach is what we have in column 8. This is the declarative. In this column, I want to have a list of emails filtered down to this project ID, right? This is the declarative approach. I want to have something in this column. I want to have something calculated. I don't care how Coda resolves it, or the platform, how they resolve it. I want to have it calculated. The problem with this, the big nice thing about this approach is that you don't have to care about how it's gonna get calculated. You just tell the system what you want to get calculated, and it's easy, right? And it's the crux of the whole no-code thing. But the downside of this is that Coda cannot make too many assumptions. It's only as good as the developers who programmed it, and they programmed it to support as many use cases as possible. So maybe for this, it would actually build some indices and optimize and not actually refresh the whole column, but only refresh certain cells. Maybe it has those optimizations underneath. But then there's the scenarios where it doesn't, and it runs the whole recalculation, so it does not know whether we can assume that nothing changed. And it runs a bit of like more calculation just in case. It recalculates everything, even if we know nothing will change. Coda doesn't know that nothing will change for the other project. And it will recalculate a bit too much, and this is what slows the system down. So the imperative approach is when we tell the system what to calculate, and in our case we tell it here, right here in the review queue, in the update project, we tell it right here to only modify the result project and take this and insert into this cell. So but we tell Coda what exactly to calculate, combine, and where exactly to put it, instead of just telling it how give me a list of emails. We take this, and this is going to be our list of emails, and put it there. So the imperative, the imperative case, we command the platform to perform something. And this is what all programmers do all the time. Well, most of the time. Regular programming is imperative programming. Setting up configuration is declarative programming. I want to have my color blue is declarative. Give me this and put a color on it and place it there is imperative, because we define the steps that have to be done in order for us to get to the result. And the biggest idea of optimizing Coda docs is replacing declarative pieces with imperative pieces. And to write proper imperative pieces, you need to know some programming. I think on this note, I will make a short break, something like 5 minutes, because I need to drink something and also turn on the lights. And also I have a hard stop in an hour. So yes, I'm gonna take a short break here. Um, need to clean up all the mess that we've just made. So we delete all these rows. We delete this column. We check these things off. Make a think about it, it brings the saved email back to review. Need to do that. And the only problem with this, though, related email stamped, is that once we delete an email that is stamped somewhere, it's gonna be a broken reference. We can restore it quickly after deleting, as long as the reference is alive and it's been, I think, 12 hours, up to 12 hours, the deleted rows are deleted. So yeah, it was still in the memory, but they get cleaned up after 12 hours or something. But yeah, this is the problem, is that when we now have a project, we have a row deleted, what shall it show? It shows 0 related emails because, well, no, wait, that's correct. But what if we delete the second one? Will it show the one remaining? Yeah, it shows the one remaining. So we don't really have to do anything about this, but we can also run automation to clean up. We can, on the project level, we can have a button to clean up. Actually, we don't need to have it on the emails. When we can have this on the archiving level. So when we, let's assume that this database will grow and we are not deleting rows from it, manually at least. But once we want to archive old emails, that helper table will also go through all the projects and clean up the deleted rows from here. So it will find all the rows that has deleted rows and update them so that they are deleted from this selection as well. Okay, or rebuild, or it can rebuild the full emails database. Okay, let me take a short break. So let's make a timer for and please tell me if you're still following and if everything is clear so far. Where did you lose the connection, Virginie? Maybe it's faster for me to just go over it again than for you to rewatch the thing. Because I'm reiterating on the same points over and over for this video. I don't know how many people are joining and whether they are joining or not. And yeah, I have a hard stop in an hour, I guess. So that I have to do everything that's remaining on this project in an hour. And hopefully... okay. Oh, very quickly have to... Well, okay, if you don't, then just give me just a few more seconds to... okay. Okay, I think, yeah, we are pretty much ready, so we need to update the protocol. Yeah, so we have this stamping logic. I don't know if we should have it in a separate... I guess we should, because, well, or should we? And yeah, the discard is just, well, just a discard. What are we doing next? Make a button that brings a saved email back to review. Well, two things that we can have here. We can either have well, previously, some half a year or a year ago, there was a problem with buttons. So whenever you added a button on a table, it was probably the most bloated thing you could have. So if you had a table with 1,000 rows, it would basically the doc would basically save the 1,000 of copies of that button, and it would bloat the doc very significantly. Then they optimized it so the code for the button is actually stored just once, and then regardless whether you have 1 or 1,000 rows, it should not bloat the doc that much when you have a button column. But previously this was a problem, so we had to externalize these things with helper tables, where you would pick the email you wanted to bring back, and then you would click a button somewhere externally to bring back those emails that you've selected, probably with checkboxes or something that you've selected to bring back. So this previously was a problem. Right now it's not a problem anymore, and if it ever becomes, I know the solution of how to do that. As I told you, you replace button with checkboxes, you have something like bring this back for review, and then you have a button externally that runs, that formula maps over each of these rows and does that logic within that one button instead of copying it here. So store for review. And by the summary or by the email queue, this can be something like email ID. So each email has some sort of an email ID. In Gmail pack or in emails that are sent here by Integromat or Zapier, you will have an email ID. So something that tells this email apart from the others. So summary, I guess the summary here is not a formula, so the review queue, if whatever the summary is, we should probably update the save button to include the summary as well. So let's have summary in this row summary, subject, this row subject, body or sender, send at sender, recipients, body, and whatever else we want to store to the thing. Yes. Restore for review. And the action is basically add a row back to the DB review queue and delete it from here. So run actions. And also remove it from DB project because we don't have a link to this email anymore. So run actions. DB review queue, add row, summary. If we bring back the summary, this row summary. Oh, well, if we save the sender person, we should probably also keep the sender's email. Sender email or send from. And when we do that, we save the sender as well. So send at is old sender. Send from this row sender. So the sender email, right? We store the sender email to the emails as well. So it will have Artem coda.tricks.com, and here it will have Andriy coda.tricks.com. Or we can actually not store this at all, but it's just something that we may want to restore. So it's better to keep those important pieces of context. So sender is this row, send from, send, or well, recipients is this row, recipients. Then we have a resolved sender already, so we can do something like select the sender manually and already force it to be this row's sender, so that if the email matches one or two or no one, but we had the sender selected manually. And the same we will do with the project. We want the project to also be selected manually. So it's back to review, but these are pre-selected for us, even though they were automatically resolved. We still shall have them like selected, pre-selected, so that whenever we go back to the review queue and press save, we get again to the same state that we are restoring from, so that it does not try to rematch it to something else unless we go and manually change it to something else. So subject is this row subject, body is this row body, and of course if we only store the first 1,000 of rows into this body, we don't have any more choice to restore than those 1,000 rows. But it's okay if we lose that. I don't think you will be restoring that often, right? Send at this row, send at, and is, and then we need to finally is not for automatic processing, set this to true, so that automation does not pick it and does not bring it back to DB email. So we actually have a chance to change something in the review queue and only then manually accept it for to get it back into DB emails. So this is the idea here first. And for integrity, I would actually not store the linked item ID. I don't think it's going to be a big problem if I actually save not the item ID, but the actual item, so an actual project. I don't think it's a big deal if I do that. Here, doesn't really matter if it's a linked item ID or if it's actually a project. This is like need to pick the phone. Yeah, back to our stream. So yeah, instead of this, just link a project, keep the link to a project. If it only makes sense to not use the lookup, but use the ID. Well, first here it makes sense because you will probably replace this project table with something else from your own setup anyway. But also it makes sense to do this when the table is actually cross-doc table, because then these references are just huge, are just becoming huge. Actually, I'm having second thoughts. Let's store the linked item ID instead. And when we restore, we can restore the, well, select the sender manually, and we can restore the, select the project manually to DB projects, filter project ID equals this row linked item ID first. And of course, yeah, and of course we need to delete this. We need to delete the row from here. And we need to clean this up from the linked rows to projects. Remember, we are not using the declarative approach anymore, so the column will not recalculate itself to now not include this deleted row in the cell, yeah, the filter, the emails for each project. It's not anymore a live formula. So if I run this, right, so I restore this one, I restore this one. It deleted 2 rows from emails, it put them back onto the review queue. It, well, resolved Artem and Rihanna, resolved project, website, Patreon, so it does not even have to automatically run any checks. Actually, here it didn't have any chance of running a check. It just, yeah, select the project manually, set to be the website. And it's okay for saving once again. But in projects, those broken links remain. So whenever we add this, we save them back. Actually, it's not a big deal if we remain those broken links, if we keep those broken links. Because when we save them back, this button will actually clean them up, right? So it cleans up the broken ones and it only keeps the actual ones, row 46, row 47. So those emails are gone. But we, just for the sake of keeping it clear, we could make it so that the restore button also, we have to write this in a imperative way. We need to instruct Coda to clean up broken row references from related emails of that project that we are restoring the email for. So we have the linked item ID. We can change this formula to do the following now. So first we can find the project, and give it a variable name, the project for this email. And then wrap the rest of the action in with name, right? So we have the project for this email variable now. Select the project is the project for this email. But now we can go to the project for this email for modify rows, linked related email stamped with related email stamp filter current value. We have project for this email, related email stamp, current value is from table bb emails. So we only keep in the cell, we only keep the items that are values from this table. So actually live existing rows from this table. Done. Done. What does it not like? Copy it. What is wrong with it? Cool. It gives me some sort of an error. I cannot save the formula. Okay, something is okay, something is wrong with this formula that doesn't want to let me save it. So we give this a name. Oh, well, yeah, this is wrong. And DB project filter, give it a name, save it here. Then we modify the row, and now it's done. So yeah, restore, and for some reason it didn't clean this up. So let's again save. Oh, well, because it first has to delete the rows and then clean it up. Because only after the rows are deleted, the value is gonna be, well, we could do it the other way. We could first filter that current value is not equal to this row, the one that we are deleting, right? And then we can delete the row. Actually, this might make a lot of sense to go that route. So we delete rows, but filter current value is not equal to this row that we are going to just delete right now. It's not going to clean everything up, but it's going to delete this particular reference from DB projects, right? So it's not going to clean everything up, but at least it's going to clean these ones up. Restore is back in the review queue. No emails. Save emails. So yeah, the restoration and the restoration works. We are half the way. Make an automation that clicks on the buttons automatically. Great. All that we have to do is, I'm keen on adding two rules. So the first rule is save when a new row appears in VB review queue and we select something that does not normally change, something like a summary or an email ID. So it can be email ID. And VB emails again, it's gonna be email ID. If is email resolved, we do take the row and click save. Oh, and if email resolved and step 1 result, which is the reference to the row that triggered the automation, is not for automatic processing, is false. So if it's set, it's not for automatic processing. Then we don't run automation on this row, right? But if it is, if we have Paul and the project is Patreon and it's not for automatic processing, again, does not let the automation run. But if it is for automatic processing, it will create the row and link that to it will create the email and then link that to the project, and automation would complete, right? So this now completed. Sometimes it would not pick on all the data, so sometimes automation will actually try and see if the row, it will trigger on the added row in review queue before these formulas get the chance to run. So the resolved sender, the automatically suggested sender, the automatically suggested projects. So sometimes the automation will fire as soon as the row is added, but before these formulas have a chance to recalculate. That does not happen often, but it happens. So what I like to do is to also have yet another automation that checks once in a while, maybe hourly. So we have an hourly rule. Time-based automation every hour or every whatever. We add a condition so that these automation runs don't count towards the quota if the condition fails. And the condition would be VB review queue filter for everything where is valid is email resolved is not blank. So we check whether there are any items in the review queue that are resolved but are not picked by automation. And then this returns true if it's not blank, if there is at least one email that is resolved but for some reason it was not yet processed. we do the formula on db review queue filter is email resolved formula map. Actually, we don't need to run for this in a formula map because we can just click save on all of the items that are returned by the filter. It's gonna work in a formula map anyway. It's gonna take one row by another and click a button on that row. So yeah, in case everything is resolved but that other rule did not pick that, it's still remaining in the queue, but it can be saved. This rule would go over it once an hour, over all the emails that have not been processed, and process them automatically. Actually, we can have a button, and maybe that's what we will do in the what we will do ultimately is have a review UI, and we have a button there to just automatically process the ones that are still remaining. Yep. We have two automation rules that will run. We'll try to automatically, so this one didn't fire. This one we just checked. Okay, let's have something here. And automation should fire any moment now. Have conditional format to is email resolved. Yep, it didn't fire. It didn't save this one because it wasn't resolved at the moment. So it's either for us to go and do all the things manually and then click save, or if a formula at some point runs later, maybe a person is added to the database of people, and maybe a project appears in the system and it gets resolved, then an hourly automation will pick on this email afterwards. Make a review UI. Do we still have time for this? Just give me a few moments, please. I need to check on when is the pub quiz, because after this thing I'm going to a pub quiz. Yeah, it's at 7 p.m., which means I still have an hour, including the time I need to dress up. Not dress up, but to get there. So half an hour, I still have half an hour. Make a review UI. Okay, let's do the review UI. It's the most fun part. I don't know if I can get it done in half an hour, but we have our DB. We can have some stats running. I cannot really show you the doc that, or maybe I can. Let me very quickly see if I can actually show that to you. So yeah, remember I told you that there were there were two kinds of emails. There were homework emails, and then there were teachers' replies to those homework emails, so post-class emails. So this is how the dashboard of that doc looked like. So there was the emails queue review, homework emails that need attention, and the number of the ones that cannot be resolved automatically. Then the post-class emails, and then those that are approved but not saved yet, and this would be basically the button that the automation would click. So they are valid. All that's left is to click save on them, only that for some reason they were not, save was not clicked on them. Then there's something else which is not relevant to our cause. And I shall make a screenshot, but I also want to hide anything that could be private information. So okay, this is how it used to look like. So there was a view of emails that are not resolved automatically. On the left, it would say, it would read from to subject, then the attachments folder. So as I said, there was Zapier saving the email and all its attachments into a drive folder. So creating a drive folder for each email, saving everything into a drive folder, including the body of the email, also setting it to the doc into the review queue. So Zapier would insert directly into the review queue. And in the end, there was also, we tried to match against the student, we tried to match against the class. The add button would then add an email to that student. So let's say it's a new email from that student. We added that for further matching, which we may or may not finish in time for today's stream. And also when we knew the student and the class, we also knew the teacher. So the action would also not just save the email to the email database, but also notify the teacher, send the notification to the teacher, the email that would say, okay, you've got a new homework. In our case, it's not the part of the template that we are trying to build, but this sort of an interface pretty much is. So although it could benefit to also in that save button to have some sort of a notification or some other sort of logic to let someone know that. But okay, this is not what we are trying to solve. Yeah, ultimately there we were working with homeworks. Here we are just trying to match an email to tasks or projects or whatever. So yeah, once we know we have a review queue and we wanna run some stats, so we can make a big, or we can it's just a so we can write it like okay, let's have a view here. So we have a view of review queue. It's gonna be a detail layout, and we're gonna set it up in a few moments. And the filter is for is email resolved is false. Can we just have an image from approved? Can we make it smaller? Mm. Okay, whatever. It's easier to just use emoji. And the action will actually be the same. So if we have at least one that's resolved, we take these and click save on them. And we can then have our automation to click this button. But just in case someone decides to delete this whole block, we can also keep the logic in there. It's not something that is a big deal if we have it in multiple places. It's not a big formula that we would have to remember to go and update in multiple places, right? So yeah, what makes another thing that makes sense to do, something that I did in that other old setup, is have a database of alerts, right? So the messages that can be displayed to the status of the email. So what's actually wrong with it? We didn't match the standard. We didn't match the. Let me quickly check again on what sort of information. Okay, we had on the emails, we had the sent at as the display column, or not on emails, but well on review queue as well. Sent at. You would probably sort this by sent at ascending, and then as a description, we would also on the review queue we would have the status. So sent at. We would have the status message, and we need to build a templates status messages database. It's something that once you integrate this an existing doc, you can just take and put these rows, move them to your DB templates. So basically we have what could be the problems. We cannot find the sender. We found too many senders for the email. We cannot match to a project. Please pick project manually, and the ambiguity, right? We matched an email to multiple projects. And finally is all is correct, right? So click save, or basically wait for an automation to save it for you in an hour. But click save. You can now click save below, and we can make save a green one and put it in a code like this. Is all matched, and this should have been probably the row number 1 and not row number 5, but okay. And now, depending on the status, we can have switch if is email resolved, then we have all matched template. If automatically suggested senders is blank, then we have unknown sender. Then if is sender strictly matched is false, then we have multiple senders. Then if automatically suggested projects is blank, then we have unknown project. Then if we have no, because this has to go away once we actually select. So is sender result false, and that is sender result false, and that. So once the sender is resolved, this error should go away, right? Regardless if we if there was any suggestion or I can actually not even check for this, because this is the only other thing that can happen when this is not blank and sender is not yet resolved. So we probably can just simplify the Boolean expression. If project, otherwise it's just is project resolved, then multiple projects matched, and finally and that is it. We don't have any more possibilities of this going wrong. So we have cannot find sender by email. We select cannot match to a project. You can now click save below, or wait for an automation for that to pick that up. Oh, but it should stay in the view. Yes, the count should not really read from here. It should, well, read from the queue. So we have 0 and then review queue resolved false. Okay. The description is the status message, and the layout is gonna be queue. Let's pick the two columns that run independently. Let's actually have a better email than this one. So we have sent at some time, email ID. Sender is, actually let's just restore one. Let's restore one, but let's break the Artem's email and let's break the project. And it's not for automatic processing. So let's set up our layout. So we will have our status message displayed somewhere in the top, but not in such a big fashion. So let's have it H3 or H2 or H3 actually. And then we are gonna, so this is the sender. Why does not it let me drag columns here? And we need to, yeah, add, so the subject, we can actually have the subject in a bit larger font. The sender, recipients, and we have the body. And email ID, we don't really care about it. And we have the sent at. A smaller subject, sent at. And by. Sent to, and then the body. And the subject can also actually be a something like this. How does it look like? It looks like this for now. Should be just the regular size text. Now, let's do it like this. Send at, send by, send to, body, and we hide the columns that we don't need. So automatically suggested projects, we need that. Result sender will go to the bottom. Result project will also go to the bottom. There's gonna be the save button, and there's gonna be the discard button. No label, no label. Automatically suggested senders, let's not show it like a table. So um, oh, Okay, automatically suggested projects. Again, not a table. Select the project manually and is all projects show all again. And instead of these two checkboxes, I will have status messages. Right, so we have website something. Yeah, once we know it's for Artem or for Andriana, we automatically suggested a project website. But again, we can do a better job about this interface, and we can also add that last piece of adding the email Artem1 to Artem. Actually, one thing that we will probably not have the time to finish today is to use this template, this review emails flow with the Gmail pack. So let me just very quickly talk about this thing. So we built a review queue and that matching thing. And it could be tempting to add those, as I told that in the beginning of my stream, it would be tempting to add all that functionality, the review functionality, right as the columns onto this Gmail pack table. But since we are not sure we will be using Gmail all along, it's better to keep this separate. So if I use this template that I've just built, or finishing building it, in a doc that has a Gmail pack data source, I would still have the review queue separately from the Gmail pack, and instead I would set up an automation to listen on new emails to the Gmail pack, and then add them to the review queue, so that if I ever delete this sync table, or decide to replace it with something else, it does not affect whatever I have built on the review queue, around the review queue concept. So new emails would be simply inserted from an email or a name or something to an email, the subject, the email ID, the date when it was sent, the text, and so on. It will be inserted onto the review queue, and then the rest of the magic will happen from there. I would probably update the matching on the sender, not on the email, because this email is useless. It's all email from the, like, in here I'm importing all the notifications from the Coda community, the Coda Maker community, right? For the last 6 months. And the email is useless because it's discourse mail, but I could match to a sender by the community name, not by the email, right? To try and find a person by name. So I would go and modify my template with a bit different logic to find who the email is coming from. So last thing I would like to do here, so I turn this off. And the last things, I would probably replace the automatically suggested senders and select the sender manually. And is sender resolved with yet another set of templates, so that it tells here, right here, what is going on. You don't have to decrypt this interface. Do this, so it's more compact. Field status. Yeah, field status. My girlfriend or fiance is calling me again. Just a sec. And now we need to incorporate these messages in if it's sender resolved, then sender resolved. If automatically suggested senders is blank, then fs no sender. Otherwise, we format fs multiple senders with automatically suggested senders, name, join them with a comma. And we can simply duplicate this to is project resolved, project status message, sender status message, project status message is project resolved, then fs project resolved value. Oops, automatically suggested projects is blank, fs no project value, otherwise multiple projects, automatically suggested projects, project name, join. And replace this with the statuses project and status messages. So sender status message, we hide this, then project, it should also prompt to pick sender first. So we also need another if sender result false, we need to first tell the user to first resolve the sender. So we first select the sender and then everything becomes great. And another thing we can do is we can add a fake horizontal rule. So that we can include it in the we have a fake horizontal rule and we can show this on a show it here to add some spacer or horizontal line to visually distinguish what's in the top, the review part of this interface and the finalization part of this interface. So we have on the left, we have the inputs for the data, and on the right we have the resolution interface, and in the bottom we have controls. Okay, this is resolved, this is, well, resolved to something else. If it's Paul, we don't know which project to resolve this to, but we can resolve it to Patreon. We click save and everything gets saved. So it's saved to the DB emails with the proper affinities. Another thing that we can do is set these buttons to only show alerts for errors, because we have the reaction. The row will disappear from the review queue if we click a button, so there is no need really to show any alerts. We have the reaction, right? We clicked on a button, we see that something happened. We don't care. We will not read into one row modified, two row added, one row something. We will not read into it anyway. So this is our review flow. By the way, is anyone still on the stream? I'm wondering what do you think of it, of what we have here? And one last thing that I wanted to add, but again, I'm not sure if I have time to do that. Link extra emails for further matching. We could have something like people. We could have something like add the page. Actually, no need to do the extra emails. We can have people, extra emails. We can have something like all. I still like to add extra emails on a separate table. So I would have a separate table and I would have a button that would add an email to that separate table, so that person Paul also, or person Artem also has. I just probably need to run because the bar quiz starts in 15 minutes. We still need to get there. So yeah, I guess at this moment I shall stop the stream. I will package this as a template and share with my October patrons. Happy to see everyone who joined, and hopefully this was an interesting exercise overall in, yeah, an interesting thing. Gosh, okay, I'm wondering how I'm gonna perform at the bar quiz, because it's an intellectual game, and I feel like the intellect is leaving my body at this point. So at least for now, I'm gonna pass it on. See you next time. Cheers.